Welcome to the January book review, coming at you live from the middle of nowhere. Lovely to have you here again.
Intro.
Hello. I really hope that the background noise is not too terrible. I think I'm going to outrun it in a minute. And hi, this month I finished 7 books. One was actually a book that I said I finished last month, which was the Sculptors Daughter by Tove Jansson, the woman who wrote the Muminki, Mamin Trolls, the Mamins, however you call it in your language, which is one of my favorite tales. This is a semi-memoir written in a magical realism style. And last month I gave it 5 stars. I still uphold that rating. However, I don't think this book is going to stay with me for a long time. I love the prose in the book. It is written in a very beautiful language. Tove Jansson's grasp of language is amazing, in other words. However, I just don't think the contents of the book will resonate with me all that well. So I'd say this 5 stars is like a 4.5 rounded up, more than an honest complete 5, if you know what I mean. Another book that I finished was Evie Drake. What does she do? Evie Drake does some stuff. Starts Over by Linda Holmes. I used to be a bookseller and I would put this book in literary fiction. However, arguably, because a romance played a big part in it, it could be put in there as well. So this month I read either 2 romances or 3 if you count this one. I don't. Because the biggest point of the book is that Evie Drake starts over and finally takes some action to find herself and think of what her life should be like after her husband's death. And she's helped by an ex-baseball player who, because of some undiagnosed problems, as in problems that throughout the book cannot be diagnosed, cannot pitch any longer. So their problems mirror each other because they both or are kind of juxtaposed, because the pitcher is more so a problem solver and approaches the thing head on, while Evie tends to hold everything inside and ignore problems and not treat them seriously. So I'd give this book a 3.5 stars. My biggest gripe with it is that Evie Drake has a male best friend who will name him Andy. I'm not sure if that's his name. So Andy and Evie are best friends, and throughout the book it is completely taken for granted that everybody in Evie's life and in Andy's life will take every interaction, like even like their significant others, are supposed to treat every interaction between them as something that's viewed in the best possible way, in the sense that nobody gets suspicious or angry at the way that they act. And for the most part, because it is a healthy friendship, they are okay. But the point that I'm trying to make is that significant others and side characters are also entitled to their emotions. And I think that because this book was so much focused on Evie Drake's internal life, it did not really give the depth of character to side characters, and they were very supportive, maybe too supportive. I think I would round it up to 4 stars if there was at least a conversation of boundaries between them. I mean, of course, it can happen in real life, but because I feel that the purpose of this book is to show a journey to healing, it would be beneficial to include this a bit more difficult side as well. I think I talked a bit too much about it. I'm sorry. By the way, hold on, because I am going to be discussing genres that I have not on my channel before, or I don't do much more. I feel that this year will be the year of sci-fi and other genres of literature. Last year I mainly read romance. This year will not be like that, so let me just breeze through 2 more reviews of romances. Kiss of the Spindle by Nancy Campbell Allen. I'll give it 3 stars. It is a fantasy romance about a woman who's, I think, a private detective, but also an empath in a world where there are witches and stuff, but also there are people who shapeshift into dangerous animals such as wolves, bears and stuff. And it kind of works like werewolves do, in the sense that they transform into these animals and don't retain consciousness throughout that process, and Evie can help them stay themselves when they're animals and things like that. It's called Kiss of the Spindle because the girl, I think I called her Evie, it's not that her name, the girl is cursed to be completely asleep, like dead asleep, for 6 hours during the night, which is awfully convenient from one point of view, but on the other hand, as a private investigator, she mainly works during the night, and she's completely vulnerable during this 6 hours, and it's getting progressively worse. So she has a romance, but also mostly wants to break the curse because she will die if the curse is not broken. So Kiss of the Spindle because it's like Sleeping Beauty. It's not particularly deep. And the last romance that I read was Deadly Lover by Jocelyn Drake. It was a reread. It is half a spy book about spies solving a case, half a gay romance. I think that the romance and their dynamic is way more of a focal point than in the previous 2 books. And I like the dynamic between characters. I know that the Russian guy is named Gabriel. I have no idea. The American guy is called Austin. I don't know. It is the book that I used to fall asleep to last month. It is good enough. I will give it a 2.5 stars because I think that it doesn't really excel at anything, and the dynamic was not really magnetic enough to warrant full 3 stars, I feel. Am I being unfair? I hope not, but you know, it is what it is. Another book that I read, so a non-romance right now, is Oracle by Andrew Piper. Oracle is a horror. It's an audiobook, an Audible exclusive. It's a horror about a guy who is a medium and can kind of sense people close to death and find them. He works as a private he works with the FBI, I'm sorry, in an official capacity too. So that's kind of interesting. And this book will get 4 stars if only because there was a moment. You can see this forest, right? I walk this forest with my dogs during the night, and I usually don't take a flashlight, or I don't light it because there's a ton of light from the stars and from the moon. It's very bright here. There's no light pollution, so you can really easily navigate. This book had a scene so creepy that I had, not only did I have to light up my flashlight, I was walking this way, and so good timing. So I decided I couldn't walk alongside the forest, which would be the shortest way. I had to walk in the middle of the field in order to avoid any ghosts. I was so spooked that I didn't want to exacerbate my spook factor and decided to walk through the field, which was, kudos to that. It did not really hold up throughout the book, but if you set the setting right, the book will be rather spooky, which I do enjoy. And I don't remember the name of the actor who read it, but I like him. He starred in Fringe, the sci-fi TV show, which I really love, as Peter. I'm going to call him Peter. He did a great job as well. So 4 stars. Not 5 because there were weaker points, but it was a very good audiobook experience. The 6th book is Mac Mindfulness by Ronald Ronald Purser. And I read this book for school actually. It is a popular popular science book on the exploitation of the idea of mindfulness in America. Mindfulness is a meditative practice adapted from Buddhism, but it just I mean, the book discusses whether it is completely secular or not, but it is a tool that is meant to help you, and it does help you be more centered and present in the moment. And the book criticizes the way that the idea was commercialized and is used against people who could otherwise benefit from it in the oppressive American capitalist system. I think it sounds rather aggressive when I say it, and it is. Honestly, it's a smackdown of the idea of mindfulness because it is very warped and bastardized in America, in the sense that it is used by corporate organizations who teach it to their employees, which then become responsible for their own distress, even though it is actually caused by the unfair working conditions they are subjected to, which is kind of the norm in the US from what I know. I mean, as a European, that is how it seems like to me. So I think the book was competently written, and I also read a couple of negative reviews of it, which feel that the argumentation was not really convincing. But I disagree. I think it is at least a four-star read. I think it was very the argumentation was well done, especially because I feel that it was a just argument, because the author named the instances and situations where mindfulness can be unquestionably positive, such as people who suffer with PTSD, chronic pain conditions, and just stress unrelated to unfair working conditions, essentially. So I'd say 4 stars. When referring to mindfulness, I think it had the added benefit for me that it was written in a rather, I won't say an angry tone, but you can sense the anger of and the rantiness kind of the person writing it. But it doesn't make for a worse read. It makes for a better read for me. Maybe it's because I am Polish. We do enjoy people being righteously angry at things. So that was a huge added benefit of the book to me. The last book that I read this month was Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. And this book goes straight into my top 10 favorite books of all time, 100%. And last year, I read a different book by Andy Weir, which was The Martian. It was actually my favorite read of last year, but I was scared that other books by him might not live up to expectations. So tentatively, I reached for Project Hail Mary. It was actually the best sold book of last year, audiobook last year on Audible. And it was amazing. There's only one more book that Andy Weir wrote that's available to the public, which is Artemis, and I'm saving that for either if I do well during this exam period or for my birthday, because after that I will be done and there will be no more and I will have to wait years for the next book to come. Anyhow, Project Hail Mary is a sci-fi with the premise that an astronaut wakes up on a spaceship alone and remembers nothing about the way he got there, but he does retain his procedural memory. It appeals to me as a psychologist. That is sound. Different types of memory can be unaffected by injuries or brain trauma or stuff like that. So it is probable and possible that he retained his procedural memory, his memory of how to do stuff, but not his memories. And the book is structured in a way that every chapter begins with a flashback, which the astronaut then reacts to and acts accordingly and proceeds with his mission or whatever. This book is very American in its sensibilities, the way that, for example, Interstellar is. I mean that just in big American productions, there are things that appeal to Americans, such as the tropes that love is behind everything that is in the Interstellar, or I don't know, there are different tropes that are just very, very present. So you can expect that some sort of very emotional conclusions to different parts of the story. This book, by the way, would make for a great premise for a TV show. It's way too much for a film. But the point I'm trying to make is that the book kind of plays with that. It still retains its American sensibilities, but how can I... Oh, there is this premise of Chekhov's gun. Everything that is mentioned, especially in a movie or a theater play, everything that is mentioned has to be, or shown, has to be relevant later. That's a thing that is extremely paid attention to in American movies. American movies don't give you any irrelevant data. Every piece you see on the screen is going to be important later, like in Marvel movies or whatever. And this book also utilizes Chekhov's gun in the sense that you don't get a single information that is not going to be relevant later, but it utilizes it in a way that I feel is not very obvious. So I did not expect that they would go that particular ending. Throughout the book, I thought that like 4 different endings, 4 different outcomes were more likely to happen just by virtue of it being a typical American book. But I was proven wrong, and I really, really enjoyed it. This was wonderful and spiritually and emotionally nourishing to me. I truly recommend it to everyone. So a 5.5-star read to wrap up this video. Thank you for joining me. If you enjoy hanging out with me, consider subscribing. Also, you can hang out with me on Reddit. All my social media are linked in the description box below. Maybe support me. There's also a link if you feel like it. Anyhow, for this month, I don't think there will be a lot of content, especially because I am restricted with how much data, internet data I can use. I have a very limited amount for this month. But in somewhat near future, I am going to be making a pretty long form content, a video essay on female dating strategy subreddit, which is super controversial. I'm going to try to take a somewhat scientific and psychological route to approach it and analyze why it's so divisive. And with that, I'll wrap things up. Thank you for joining me, and bye-bye.